Welcome to iPad Pros, the show all about using the iPad to be productive and get work done. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show. Welcome back to another episode of iPad Pros. Today on the show is Daryl Baxter, host of the Outpost Show, a new iPad-focused show. You can find his work over at darylbaxter.com. We discuss a lot of things in this episode, including his setup, how he uses the iPad, when will iPads go more mainstream for desk work at different offices, the future of Siri, the future of AirPower, and much more. I had a fun time talking with Daryl about all of this stuff, and I'm really looking forward to everyone listening to this conversation. Once again, to open this episode, I'd like to ask you to head on over to the Apple Podcasts app and rate and review this show. Every review means a ton, both to me and in helping it become more discoverable. If you have a few minutes to do that, I'd greatly, greatly appreciate it. You have my thanks if you have done so already. With that said, let's get to my discussion with Daryl about the iPad. Welcome to iPad Pros. I'm here today with Daryl Baxter of the Outpost Show. Welcome, Daryl.
Hi, Tim. How you doing?
Doing great. I was anxious to have you on the show because you recently started a new podcast all about the iPad, pretty much, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, been going for about 5 months, I believe now.
Okay, and is it monthly, every 2 weeks? What's your frequency on this one?
It kind of varies. I mean, I'm trying to get it every fortnight at the moment, and at the moment it's going pretty well, really. Should have an episode out next week as well, so yeah, it should be good.
Wonderful. And what's your focus? Is it just general in iPad, or is there a certain area?
It's really just about how someone uses an iPad. I mean, to be honest, going back a few years, I was just kind of the biggest kind of naysayer about an iPad because I used to think it was just a bigger iPhone, as a lot of people used to
right,
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ever since kind of the iPad Pros came out, I've just been a total convert. So I've always been curious as to how someone uses their iPad in their own daily work life. And it's just kind of shows kind of spun from there, really.
And you yourself, what's your computer setup like?
Oh, so at the moment, I'm on a 10.5-inch iPad Pro, 256 gigabytes, and I've also got on the side, well, I say on the side, Tim, it's a MacBook Air.
I have the same. Well, I have a MacBook Air I use maybe once a week, if that, for like one task.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think we're the same there, really, because I'm using it right now to talk to you on this. So it's amazing. I'm finding things on my MacBook I've completely forgotten about. So it's nice to see it again. But yeah, I've got that. And with the iPad, I've got the smart keyboard as well, which I use every day, to be honest, because it's always in my bag alongside my Nintendo Switch as well. And in my bedroom, I've got this kind of iMac stand that I kind of dock my iPad in with this third-party keyboard as well, which I'm really planning on getting it replaced soon.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's how I'm standing at the minute.
Nice. Okay. And was the 10.5 your first Pro, or did you have a first generation that you upgraded from?
No, this is my well, I did upgrade from the first generation because it's a weird thing, Tim, in this day and age, because I used to be all about the iPhone and, you know, upgrading every year and interested from WWDC as to what it would bring to the iPhone. But especially in the last couple of years, I've been more interested in what the iPad brings and what models are coming out. So when I see news of a new iPad coming out, I'm more interested in that now this year. So as soon as I saw the 10.5-inch iPad come out, I was already planning on selling my original Pro.
Yeah, I'm right now the same way. I rock an iPhone SE, and that's a fast, small, little phone that does what I need. And it's amazing because like people say, "Oh, you want the bigger screen?" It's like, no, I got two iPads when I want a big sit-down experience with something like that. And I've got my watch for. I'll actually just take my watch out with cellular when I go on dog walks and listen to podcasts on that. And the phone is not as essential as it once was for me.
No, definitely not. I mean, I'm currently in a kind of a year-long test with the Plus model of the iPhone. So I upgraded to the iPhone 8 Plus last year. And I just wanted to see what it was like as a Plus owner, just to see what it was like. Because you've got some features that borrow from the iPad, such as the landscape home screen. And at the moment, I have to say, it's kind of like an iPad mini, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, really, because even though with iOS 11, there were some good features with, say, the iPhone, it was really more about the iPad, I thought. And I mean, at the moment, this year, I'm kind of looking towards what the next iPad Pro is going to bring more than what maybe the next iPhone model is going to bring instead. I'm really more interested in that.
Yeah. Now, what do you use your iPad for? What's your main work that you do on computers?
So I'm a freelance writer when I'm not doing the day job. So I mean, I've written for kind of like UK magazines like Mac Format, even Jim Dalrymple's Loop magazine a fair few years ago. I wrote a feature on that of how to use an iPad at university, and it graced the front cover, and it was surreal, but it was interesting. So I use it for mainly writing. So Ulysses is on my dock straight away. I also use the Notes app as well. It's gotten so powerful in the previous iOS releases, especially with markup as well. And
you're using Notes with markup. That's really interesting because it won't display anything special. What's your use case of markup with Notes?
Well, the thing is, I mean, sometimes when I'm looking at, say, my the site Outpost that I kind of write just for fun, really. Sometimes I'll have an idea as to how I can lay out maybe certain sections of the site, or maybe just what I want to do, maybe with the Outpost show itself. So I just sketch random things with my finger, and they'll just be in a note, and then I can just drag and drop it into maybe pages or just an email as well, just to get some feedback. Because I have really thought about the Apple Pencil, Tim, but because I'm a writer, I'm torn at the moment as to whether it'll benefit me.
Yeah, I love the Apple Pencil. It's at a point where I think I've used my one so long that I probably need I don't know if they do battery replacements for those, but it seems like it's dying really quickly these days.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago about, just pushing my case for an iPad OS, really, just on the fact that when the Apple TV was first around, it was based off iOS, and they didn't really call it TV OS until, I believe, 2016, really.
And originally, Apple TV was based on the Mac.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like from the front row days.
Yeah.
So that's just going back a fair few years, just back in the day. But I just think that, especially now with iOS 11 and drag and drop in the dock, the iPad can really just benefit from being its own system, in a sense, especially with the Files app as well that came out too.
Yeah, it needs to be familiar, but yet have a lot of unique features. And as they develop this shared codebase type development language they're talking about, that has me intrigued about what that could offer the iPad as far as Mac apps coming to the iPad that once couldn't, professional apps.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I think some people have a misconception as to thinking this Marzipan update will just be an iPad app running on a Mac, and that's not the case, I believe. I just think it's more so certain APIs are going to be shared between the two systems. The same kind of layout, but just enough on the Mac side to benefit from a mouse.
Yep.
And that's really it.
I think it'll cut down the work. So instead of having to rewrite 80% of your app, you'll have to rewrite 40% of your app to make it work, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it will definitely benefit the Mac in the long term, because, I could go off on a tangent about the Mac itself, really, Tim. But I'm not going to, it's fine.
Now, back to Notes and Ulysses. How do you divvy up what you put in each of your toolboxes? Because I have 1,000 writing apps, and I use a couple different ones for different purposes. I'm curious what you do.
Yeah, sure. So with the Notes app, it kind of admittedly, I share it between my iPhone and the iPad. So any random thoughts I get for maybe an article or a post, or just a random idea for something, I'll put it in my notes. And especially this is where the iCloud Photo Library service comes in. I can screenshot something, and I think this is the best service Apple have, actually, iCloud Photo Library.
Oh, it's wonderful. Screenshot something. It used to... Yeah. I've lost photos before. Back in college, I lost music that was on my hard drive. I'm so glad we're at this place.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's especially say screenshots, I can mark it up and then it'll save it. Then it'll show on the iPad. Then I can drag and drop it into notes, and everything just works in that way. So I'll do like very rough drafts in the Notes app, and then I'll take it over into Ulysses, where it will just kind of turn into kind of a structured post with quotes and links and some pictures as well, just to give me an idea. And then, really, admittedly, the third stage will be dropping it into WordPress, where Outpost is powered on. So with Ulysses, I mean, I have to say it's such a good app. I mean, I only updated to it a year ago because I was using IA Writer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. But unfortunately, it didn't really need the power that I required. It didn't really have that feature. With Ulysses, and they brought out a subscription. And since then, it's just gone to come from strength to strength, and I love it.
Yeah, it's a great app. It's in my dock. I use it at my day job. I use it for this podcast. Something I love about IA Writer, though, they recently came out with a font that is available for free, and you can install it on your iPad. It's one of my favorite fonts in the world, and I have that I use in Ulysses now. So I'll probably find a link for the show notes, but it's a great font to download and put on your iPad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a matter of fact, talking about fonts, I was reading Mac Stories Federico Vidici's post on 2017 apps, and I couldn't believe, this is only a month ago, Tim, but finding out that you can install fonts on your iPad, I had no idea.
Oh yeah,
and I've had
great.
an iPad for 2 years. I couldn't believe it. So I'm opening up Pixelmator, and it's actually showing the fonts that I use on my Mac to edit banners and photos for Outpost, and it works great, I have to say. And I was honestly thinking this is one of the things where Apple would just point blank refuse, and I can't believe something like this is possible. So it's making me kind of, in a way, more daring.
Yeah,
is to use iPad in different ways. So it's really great to see just little things like that.
There's even, if you're good with calligraphy and stuff, there's even an app to make your own fonts on iOS by drawing onto your iPad screen. Like you write out an A, you write out every variation, and you could literally have your own handwriting as a font if you're good enough at getting that right.
Oh, my handwriting is terrible. I won't go.
Yeah, I tried it once. It did not turn out that well. But it's a cool little thing you can do. It's something that you wouldn't really, I don't think, attempt on a computer with a mouse or even a Wacom. I think the Apple Pencil is a great input method for that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, I'm trying to use this year as kind of going even more all in on the iPad, because I'm just about to invest in the camera connection kit on the iPad, because I love like mechanical keyboards.
Yes.
I just love the feel of it. I mean, even on this Bluetooth keyboard I have now, I just love the fact of just how it sounds ridiculous, Tim, but still, just the how you can just type on a key and the travel is so. It feels really good.
Yeah. With that said, I like the smart keyboard, how it feels. It feels better than any of Apple's other laptop keyboards right now.
Yes. No, I totally agree.
Which isn't a higher standard, but it's feels pretty good to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's partly the reason why I still have the Air, because it still has the keyboard, which I've always loved. Whereas I go into an Apple store and I just don't like it at all. I don't like the butterfly keyboard.
Yeah, I love USB-C. That sounds wonderful. But yeah. So, for your day job, is it a computer-based job, or is it something else you're up to for your main income source?
It is a computer-focused job. So it's the job title of data analyst. So it's a finance company essentially in the city of Manchester.
Okay.
But
I'm guessing they're not very flexible with what you use.
Not really, no.
Okay.
So I mean, in my day job, it's a lot of Windows 8 computers. So it's it's definitely different.
That's interesting. They're on Windows 8 still, with 10 being such a big upgrade.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, because of the crazy snow that you may have seen from this week, it's been amazing. And I was working from home for the first time this week for 2 days, and they have this Citrix receiver virtualization.
Oh, and are you doing that from your iPad?
Yes, and I have to say I have to thank you for this.
Yes,
because I was listening to a few episodes before, and I had no idea you could Bluetooth the mouse.
Oh, it's brilliant! I do this at work every day. So I'm able to use both my iPads to my day job, and I most of my workflows I do on my iPad, but occasionally I have to dip into the Mac that's like in a cabinet next to my desk. But yeah, so you can use the Bluetooth mouse with Citrix receiver and Jump Desk.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I mean, the first day I was on my Air using the Citrix receiver and it was fine. But I was using an app called Duet to have the iPad as a second screen. So it was working and it was great. But I was kind of, it sounds crazy, but I was guilty in a sense because I wanted to use the iPad a lot.
Well, part of it for me was my old MacBook at work. The screen is just... It's nowhere as good to look at all day than my 12.9 second gen Pro. Like, there's no comparison. I'd rather look at this beautiful iPad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially, when I'm moving, like, say, from a MacBook Air, a non-Retina display, to the iPad Pro, and it's just something else. It's crazy. And, the second day when I, started using the iPad Pro with Citrix, I couldn't believe it. I had the smart keyboard connected. I was using a mouse. I was like, what kind of world am I living in right now? It's crazy. I'm using Microsoft Excel on Windows 8 with a mouse on an iPad Pro. And I thought, oh, I'm sold now. I really want to see more of this. So, yeah, I have to thank you for that, Tim, because I had no idea before I listened to that.
So, long term, how long do you think the world, like corporate places, will be run in this Windows world with mice and keyboard being the norm? Will it take a generation of people that grew up on iPad for this shift to happen? How long do you think this will be?
It's an interesting point because we're 8 years now into the iPad, and I think now, especially how we are with work and the internet and everything now and the cloud computing, I think we're definitely in the forefront of of remote working from anywhere you wish.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see a world where there's going to be self-driving cars and the car is going to be your office.
Right.
No matter what, you're going to be on an iPad. You're going to be remote desktoping using Citrix on an iPad in your self-driving car. Hopefully, maybe it's flying with hoverboard. I don't know. But I'm hoping. But the main thing is, I can see, there's going to be a remote working from home, no matter how the weather is, on the iPad, or maybe even a Surface tablet, just throwing it out there. And I think definitely, in my opinion anyway, that's going to be when the 12.9-inch iPad is going to, be worth its weight in gold, because you'll have more content, you're going to be able to use it a hell of a lot more than what you can now. And I believe, let's say, especially with Apple's partnership with IBM as well, I can see them almost coming up with kind of a business-orientated app that will enable, more work related apps to come onto the platform for businesses.
Yeah, I'm curious how long people will be stuck using Windows software, and will it take another decade or two for iPad to become the de facto, or something else by that point? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the hardware, I think we're there now. It's at a point where it can rival, game consoles of the past. I wholeheartedly believe that if someone converted maybe a PlayStation 3 game of maybe the first Uncharted, you would be able to have it running on an iPad Pro.
Oh, sure. Input's the big problem with that one. And
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I've said before, like, how I just think that, especially with the keyboard, there's so much potential there as well. Because I'm definitely a big retro gamer.
Yeah, and I haven't seen... Have you seen, Daryl, any games use keyboard like you can on a PC for input? Because I've seen the MFI, but I've not seen, like, I've got a smart keyboard hooked up. Let me do old school, mouse keyboard, but just the keyboard part.
No, yeah, that's the thing. That's at the minute, Tim, that's my biggest gripe with the iPad, because you have this fully fledged keyboard, and with the camera connection kit, you can use almost all mechanical keyboards as well. But when you launch an app, like, for instance, my favourite game of mine, Tomb Raider 2, you've got so many controls on the screen, whether to, have Lara walk, shoot, look, action button, roll, jump, and it's covered across the iPad screen. I mean, you launch it on a 12.9-inch iPad Pro on Tomb Raider 2, and it's crazy,
Yeah, you really need interfaces designed for just touch, and that's why the Nintendo Switch is so lovely, and I love Nintendo and their games. So
Same, exactly. Whereas, on the Mac App Store, you can download Tomb Raider 2 and you can use the keyboard, and it works great. It really does. You don't have to use a mouse or a trackpad. You just use the keyboard and just carry that over to the iPad Pro. I just think that would be a great thing. I mean, you could have Doom, you could have Tomb Raider 2, Sonic, Grand Theft Auto. None of them need a mouse. It just needs a keyboard.
Right.
And to have that on a smart keyboard, I think would be really enticing for developers.
Yeah, I'm fascinated why that hasn't been an input method. Maybe because it's newer as far as a common thing that's been done, but I didn't even think that, because Bluetooth keyboards, that I've seen those in airports for years now, way before the Pro. Yeah. People were flocking to those crappy Bluetooth keyboard cases for forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have Apple who, who bring out a smart keyboard with a smart connector, and it works great. And, even though like some of the arrow keys are a bit smaller than what I'd like, you could still control Sonic easily. You could just remap the keys and it would work.
Yeah,
great.
with Sonic, I mean, you don't need the up. You're just going left and right and hit the spacebar for jump. Yeah, 'cause up and down keys are a bit tiny on that thing.
A little bit, Tim, yeah, that's the thing. But I just believe, if they brought that out to either, iOS 12, 13, iPad OS, etc., that would be really good. I mean, I'm just going through my games folder now. I mean, unfortunately, there's games like Doom Classic or the classic X-Men arcade game. It hasn't been updated for iOS 11, so I can't run it. But, just the fact that I could have a keyboard to play it instead of a massive gamepad that you may have seen on an iPad Pro, I just think it looks ridiculous.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to have something like that would be great. But that's really what I'm hoping for the next release for the iPad.
For other apps that you have on your iPad, what other tools do you have on there? Are you a workflow user? Do you use any other apps of note?
Well, I have to say, I mean, I've only just started using Workflow because in the beginning I didn't really see a need for it because I just thought, well, I can just do things myself. I'm very stubborn like that too.
Right, yeah.
So, but I have seen some benefits in Workflow. I mean, a friend of mine from Twitter, Greg, he gave me a shortcut where you could just easily add a GIF to a tweet. It's a small thing.
Sure.
but it works really well. And, it's a fact of just going to the widget screen and just, pressing the Workflow shortcut and you're there straight away. It reduces the amount of taps. So I'm starting to use Workflow a bit now.
There's some cool ones. I mean, you can download YouTube videos and have it converted to audio. You can, it works with WordPress really well. And I use it in combination with editorial and Workflow to do stuff with WordPress, and it's a really cool combination of what you can actually do with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I mean, that's some of the things. I mean, primarily, Tim, a lot of it I use is for Ulysses. I mean, with the 256 gig of storage, I have a lot of video on it as well.
Yeah.
Which is, really why I really want them to bring out external hard drive support, because it has, like, say, the videos that I've, obtained from my, DVDs and Blu-ray. I just want to put them on, and having to use iTunes and how it crashes for me every time I'm trying to import a video, it's just a nightmare.
Yeah.
So just to have that, that way of just going, plug it into the iPad. Do you want to import these to Infuse or your video app of choice? Go for it.
Yeah. Now, the Outpost Show, do you do production on the iPad for that? Or is that your Air at that point still?
At the moment, it is the Air. But I know there are ways of being able to use it on the iPad. Because I've just discovered an app called Ferrite.
Yeah, that's what I use. I think producing iPad shows on the iPad is simpler and more easier and all that good stuff with Ferrite than any Mac tool I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, on the Mac, I use Audacity to try and capture, like, say, my voice only. But it's very, like, long and kind of, like, making sure it's just right.
Yeah.
Whereas Ferrite, it works really well. So it's hence why I'm getting the kind of connection kit, because it's just a matter of plugging this microphone into the iPad and it'll work.
Yeah, it's an all-in-one tool. It's got Levelator built in. It's got the podcast chapter app built in. It's a very powerful tool. It's got a lot of different... On the Mac, I had to have, like... It's funny, I had to have, like, 3 apps to do what I do in one for Ferrite. It's kind of backwards what you're most time used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the split screen app support as well. I mean, I love it. It's one of my favorite features on the iPad. Just the fact that I can, type on Ulysses and then have maybe, the Notes app as a small split screen app, or YouTube, just so I've got some kind of extra ideas for the post itself or anything else. I love it.
Yeah.
But I still think that there's more work to be done on that.
Yeah, there needs to be a way to change what your keyboard focus app is. Like, I want to change, if I'm typing on the left side of the screen, move it over to the right side with some sort of shortcut.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even, like, say, the short links, I'll see a link to Twitter, for example. I'll have Ulysses on one end and maybe the Messages app on the left. And as soon as I press on the Twitter link, it just opens the Twitter app in full screen, and I think, oh no, where was I? How am I going to get back to that? So it's very annoying in that sense, because it doesn't give you an option to say, do you want to open this in slide out? Do you want to open this in Tweetbot in this part of the split screen?
Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of refinement to be done there as well.
Am I the only one that didn't know you could change the left to the right app by just holding and sliding over that little bar at the top of the right mini app?
I did know that, Tim. Yes.
Okay, it took me like a good 8 months to figure out that was a feature. I just thought you couldn't move it. It's like, oh wow, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things, like those little things that Apple do, and they do it well. But it leaves you to find out on your own. It's kind of like the trackpad. I didn't know for about 3 months that you just have two fingers on the keyboard and suddenly the cursor, you can just move it around. That was a revelation.
Yeah.
It's great. But I do think that, there's a lot of refinements to be done in the iPad. I mean, the biggest one for me at the moment is Siri. I mean, Siri itself, admittedly, there's...
do you see a future in Siri and its usefulness?
I do. I really do.
Okay.
I do think that kind of their stance on privacy is holding the features back. That's my opinion on it, even though I wholeheartedly agree with it.
Yeah, because I won't have an Echo or a Home in my house, but one day, I don't yet, but one day I'd have a HomePod because of privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even though privacy is at the forefront of their mind with Siri,
they can do better. It's like, the Oscars is tomorrow or tonight, and they might screw that up. It's like, a lot of it's not even the privacy. A lot of it's just using privacy as an excuse.
I mean, I was using Siri a few days ago, and I'm trying to find the tweet in a hurry, but I kind of said, so Siri, how many days is it until 2019? And it just replied with, this time tomorrow it'll be 10 hours. I'm like, what? What? How does that relate to my question? No, that doesn't make sense.
So what do you want to see in the future for Siri as far as a way to be productive on iOS? Because we have touch input, we have keyboard input, then voice. How do you see the voice playing into all of that?
I think, first of all, it's got to be the UI of Siri on the iPad, because it's one of those things, unfortunately, where it's kind of copied the whole feature set from the iPhone, slapped it onto the iPad, because you could be doing, like, say, Ulysses in one side of the iPad and something else, and if you say Siri, it covers the whole screen.
Sometimes it's pretty annoying, because that little feature where you can call up Siri, it'll summon all my devices, and the screens will just black out and turn into that, and it'll recognize which one it's supposed to be, but that the screens still get taken over. It seems like you could have a better interface to that.
I would love for them to kind of bring back the Siri how it was on iOS 6 on an iPad, where it kind of showed the iPhone aspects near the home button, and it just showed it as a pop out. So you were still doing your work, but it showed it like kind of on an iPhone screen. That would be great to see.
Yeah, I'm also envisioning. Do you remember Palm WebOS and the slide up from the bottom type thing they did?
Oh yeah,
maybe
I love
Siri living in something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Palm Pre. I have to say, I was so disappointed at how it turned out. And it's amazing, really. Just on a side note, just to see how far the iPhone 10 has kind of been influenced by it as well.
Yeah, I love that OS. I have brand new veers and I have a touchpad that I was way into that. I wanted that to live on. It did not.
Oh, I love it, but I digress.
Yeah. But that'd be one way to tackle this here. Taking over the whole screen is just ridiculous as far as an interface standpoint.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of, a lot more focus should be put onto the UI of Siri, even just to have it similar to the Mac OS as well. If it's on the top right of the screen, that would be great. But even kind of even reminders, I mean, I don't like the reminders app at all. The UI, I think, is horrible. And, to have that as kind of like a Siri pop-up on the top right would be great. Just have it baked in would be great.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just don't like it, Tim.
Yeah. That would be interesting to have a Siri. So currently Siri, you have to know that Siri works with your app, right? So imagine a future where the apps that work with Siri, within that app, there'd be a special Siri interface for if you just want to be talking to your app versus the wider world of Siri, being what it is. And in that way, Siri could also be more effective within your app doing recognition and stuff, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd love to have a point where I'll be in Ulysses. I need to Google something or a calculation or a quick name of someone. Just throwing out there who won the World Series in the early 1920s. And can you drag and drop it into this paragraph? Siri will know what I'm on about, will find the result, and then copy it into this next line on my Ulysses. And that's it. I'd love something like that. Just kind of a super smart, UI-focused way of just helping me out without having me to kind of drag and drop and copy and paste and everything there. It would be great.
On the drag and drop and copy, how are you using that right now? Is it mostly drag and drop, or are you still doing the old school copy?
It's a bit of both, I have to say. I love the drag and drop with the images. That works really well because I use a video app called Infuse, and sometimes I can kind of just drag and drop a still image from a video that I'm watching into the Notes app without having to do anything else, and it's great. And even say links as well. Yeah. So maybe just a link, to a certain tweet, and I can just drag and drop it into Ulysses and just make a link there. I just think it's really useful. But there are times when I think, especially in the Messages app, where I just have to kind of hold down and do it the old-fashioned way, copy and paste.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's always fascinating trying to figure out what things are draggable and droppable and all that. It is some learning. It's not the most discoverable. I wonder about that, but maybe as people grow up with this, it won't be an issue in the future. Yeah.
I mean, I do think definitely. I mean, with say the recent news of kind of them being able to hold back features, or from what I hear, I hope it's not true, but holding back iPad features for iOS 13. I'd like to see refinements in the way of kind of more powerful drag and drop. So, maybe if a whole email, you can maybe drag and drop it into a new email, perhaps. That's a new forward action. Or I haven't actually tried whether you can do drag and drop in Siri itself. I'm not sure if that's an option.
I'm not sure. That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think then again, that could be the UI issue as well, because, then you're going to have to use both your hands because of the full screen Siri.
Now, form factors, do you see us getting a desktop 20-inch iPad in a couple years?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I think it's mostly down to the software, really. Because I think with the hardware, we're there now. It's so powerful. It's there. The memory's there. It's great. I think it's just Face ID, really, we're waiting for now in the new iPad. I do believe that if more powerful features and refinements came to iPad itself, and iPad only, then we could see a replacement of kind of the lower MacBook line. And, I mean, to be honest, Tim, I've got, I'm not afraid in saying that the iPad is a great, PC workstation. It can happily rival, say, a MacBook of, the Snow Leopard era, really.
Yeah.
And I do believe that eventually we're going to see, a bigger iPad, but an iPad that's, just as powerful as macOS, and it's going to be refined in a way that, you're not going to be using a MacBook unless for maybe heavy video editing, in the future.
Yeah, and video editing, there's at least one really great app for that. LumaFusion is just wonderful, and so even that, they're doing some cool things too with Chroma Key, where with the augmented reality APIs, I think they're detecting depth and stuff to figure out what is you and what is the background to like make that even better than what you could do it on traditional computers, which is really cool.
Sure. I mean, I think that's definitely where, say, the bigger iPads will benefit from the videos as well, video editing.
Yeah, more space to spread out, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have been tempted, admittedly, to look into a 12.9-inch iPad, but I think for what I use it for, and for how the iOS is at the minute, I can't justify it enough. If it brought maybe, a way to add a third split-screen app on the 12.9-inch app, I think that'd be a great thing. But I think at the moment... I'll have to hold back.
Yeah, not everyone's like me where they'll use two iPads at the same time as like a multi-display setup. At work, I've got two of the Belkin charging stands, those smart connector stands, and a big iPad, a small iPad. Everyone else has two screens, so I figure I should have two screens.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the episode where you were saying about a multi-display iPad. It was interesting to imagine that, because I've been an owner of like an iPad Mini 4, an iPad 3, most of the iPads apart from the 12.9-inch. And, to think of a world where, you could have two iPads running concurrently, but dragging apps to different iPads. I think it's an interesting concept. And I do think that, we're not far from that really happening, to be honest.
Yeah, currently AirDrop has been really useful. So I'll AirDrop something to my other iPad if I need it over there. And that works pretty well. But some refinements need made on that. Sure.
I mean, especially with, say, like maybe the schools as well, with the Classroom app that's apparently coming I think it is iOS 11.3 soon with ClassKit.
Okay.
Yes. So I do think there's a lot of potential there. And I think because with Apple, especially, with, say, the dock that happened with iOS 11 on the iPad, and then you saw it on the iPhone 10, they do hint towards what could be coming over the horizon. So I would be confident in saying that this ClassKit, this Classroom app with different users, is going to be kind of a hint towards multi-users on an iPad.
Yeah,
with Face ID.
So that never rolled out. I thought in iOS 10 they added educational support for multiple users.
They didn't.
Okay.
I remember, I think it was 10.2 where they made a big deal about it, but they just kind of brought out a Classroom app, and you could have like different Apple IDs. But that was it. That's as far as it went, to be honest. I mean, to be honest, I was at a technology shop. I was pretty much Apple's equivalent of a genius. So I had my own appointments and situations of helping people with their iPads and iPhones. Mm-hmm. And the main issue that I was dealing with was how people were using the same iPhone and iPads on the same Apple ID. And as soon as they upgraded either the OS or the iPhone or iPad itself, that device would be the primary Apple ID. So they'd have all the iMessages coming in, all the apps come in, all the photos come in, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah, there almost needs to be like a work mode when you log into an Apple device where there's no way for you to actually enable iMessages without some kind of PIN, like a two-factor, to when you go in system preferences to enable that stuff.
I mean,
that would make sense to me.
I mean, I do believe, like, I think with Face ID, I think it's not the iPhone 10. I think it's the iPad line that it's best suited for, because the setup I have, like I say, in my bedroom, it would be in this clamp on the iMac stand, and just me sitting down on my chair, it could then unlock it, and then I'd be ready to go. And I think that's great. And if someone else was to come in and sit down, it would then recognise it's not me and only have certain apps available for them to use. So they couldn't access my banking app or my mail or Ulysses even. I think that'd be great for Face ID in the future.
Yeah, I'm really curious on Face ID when it eventually comes to iPad and how it will react to me using two devices concurrently. If that'll be a thing. But I guess you just turn off attention awareness on one of them and that would solve that issue maybe.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of potential. I mean, you hear again with those rumours of, say, FaceTime with Animoji being used inside it with iOS 12. I mean, that would be great. FaceTime, I think, is definitely due for an update, especially with, say, how Skype and Discord is at the moment.
Evidently, patents is what prevented FaceTime to go multi-people for the longest time and still isn't there yet. That some patent is like preventing us from having nice things.
Patents. Oh, yeah. It drives me mad.
But Animoji, I'd love to see an Animoji like video creator app for iPad and some kind of content creation tool there versus just sharing an iMessage. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having that as a kind of a third-party API, so you could use it in maybe, I'm putting it out there, but maybe, Skype in the future, probably not, but maybe, Facebook Messenger, just even like, say, games as well.
Yeah, I'd love it as just like a puppet, make a virtual puppet show for people, like, and record it and put it on YouTube. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, like, say, a family member, like, say, a dad and his daughter, he could maybe make his own, like, Animoji puppet show for his daughter.
Yeah, definitely.
As he's working away from home. It's a nice thought, to be honest, when I think about it. But there's so much potential there. And I do believe that when it comes to June, we're going to be hearing a lot more about maybe a more open Animoji API. And I think, hopefully, personally, we're going to see more features with the iPad as well.
Right. Now, AirPower is something that's coming to the watch, the phone, and AirPods. Something I struggle with is both the form factor of AirPower being laying on a mat and also the power output of what it would take to charge an iPad. Yeah. Both of those don't seem to line up to me into what could happen. And the smart connector will charge your iPad. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but it's enough for just a drip throughout the day. So it's great as you're working throughout the day. If you're there for 8 hours, it'll keep your iPad going without needing to plug in. But what do you see for AirPower with the iPad? Is that going to be a thing they attempt?
Well, that's an interesting thing because I said this in that post a week ago about how I just think that with AirPower, there's so much potential where the iPad smart keyboard case, it could be like a section of it could be for AirPower. So you could have maybe, the iPad like laying on a desk, as you're working away, but you place your AirPods or your iPhone on top of the iPad and it charges it, just up to a certain point. And even though at the moment there's not enough power for the smart connector to do that, I think it could be a good reason to sell a new iPad model that you could maybe call Smart Connector 2 that could do this ability and would kind of entice upgraders to change to this new iPad. So I believe that there's potential there. And
that is a fascinating idea, though, using the iPad to charge your phone through AirPower.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the iPads, 10.5 models and the 12.9, most of it is what you're holding. That weight is battery,
Brilliant.
at the end of the day. So
it's great.
Yeah. So I'm just curious as to how much percentage of that 12.9-inch iPad model would take away charging an AirPods, to full charge. I mean, I could see it maybe taking 5%, realistically. So you place it on the smart case while it's closed, it charges it, and then you're ready to go.
I love this idea. I really hope Apple's listening right now.
Hopefully that's going to work. I mean, I've got a Qi charger myself, and that's just beside me now, and it's great. Don't get me wrong, but I have to say, I can't see it being compatible with the iPad. For some reason, something tells me that it just doesn't seem feasible. For a device the size of an iPhone, great, and the watch and the AirPods, great. But I just don't think it is for the iPad. I think that should be something to charge from.
Yeah, completely agreed. Now, one thing I'm really disappointed with Apple and the third parties is smart connector accessories. There just should be more of these accessories out there. and there should be more creativity about what is being done with those accessories using that port. It's just mind-boggling. It's been around for a couple of years now and still not much.
That's a puzzling thing for me, because I think all I've seen is a Logitech keyboard that connects to it and has the light-up keys as well. But that's all I've seen so far. Actually, I've just remembered from my AirPower idea, the fact with the Apple Pencil that you have to charge it through the iPad connector, just to place that on the case as well. I'm still in two minds with the pencil, like I say, but we will see.
Is there anything we didn't cover about the iPad that you wanted to dive into today?
Not really, Sim. No. I have to say it's been an insightful chat.
Wonderful. And for folks that want to get in touch with you and see what you're up to, is Twitter the best place for that?
Yeah, I'm usually on Twitter. So my handle is Daryl Baxter. Everyone gets my name wrong, so it's Daryl Baxter. There's also a Twitter handle for the Outpost site, so it is Outpost site. But you can probably find me on there at the minute. Yeah, so it's pretty much, if you want to get me for a chat, it's always on Twitter.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Daryl. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Tim. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to iPad Pros. You can find the show notes and website over at iPadPros.net. If you have a few minutes, please review the show on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. You can send feedback to iPadProsPodcast@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at tchen, and the show on Twitter at iPadProsPodcast. There's also a newsletter you can sign up for at iPadPros.net that will notify you by email when new episodes are out. With that said, thanks for listening to iPad Pros.